Greetings. This is just gonna be a video of me going over some of Undertale's areas and things I find interesting about them. So let's jump right in. The Ruins was the first location to be created for this game, and you can tell. It's pretty barren, with next to no overworld NPCs and not many things to see or do. There are puzzles, which are what you spend most of your time doing in this area. But for inhabitants of the Ruins, I imagine these would serve more as inconveniences than, say, pastimes. I think the Ruins being this empty adds a lot to Toriel as a character. It shows how isolating it must be to live here, how droll the day-to-day must be after you get used to it. And she spends centuries here, alone. There are other monsters around, this area has the most random encounter enemies in fact. But most of them are too meek to talk to Toriel. Perhaps justifiably so, considering she intimidates them for attacking the humans that fall down. Snowdin's a cold place, and as such most monsters living here are furries. Now it's not all of them, but it is most of them, which makes the exceptions to the rule stick out. That's where Sans and Papyrus come in. They're newcomers to Snowdin, and likely new to this universe as a whole. The fact that they don't match the local theme of their home area and that we never see any other skeletons in the game, is a pretty great, subtle way for them to feel like outsiders. The same can be said of Grillby, a fire NPC in a snow area. He clearly moved here from Hotland, and I just love that. It's cool that monsters move around the underground rather than every fire guy staying in Hotland forever. It makes this world feel a lot more real. Punk Hamster also talks about people moving in from new home due to overpopulation. So even though this game is cheery, and this is a small town, you still get a sense that monsters are cramped in the underground, and that it's a rough place to live. Nakarat Jester and Scarf Mouse talk about the same thing. Those little acknowledgements peppered throughout the game that this setting is not some place you'd want to live, that everyone would be happier if they could leave. It helps cement the conflict that both you and monsterkind want out, without making the tone of the game miserable. I have a rantsona now. Waterfall is a moodier place than the previous areas. A shift in tone is immediately made clear by Undine, a silent, menacing knight. It's designed pretty well to make the area feel ancient, mystical, and sacred. It's very fitting for the place that you learn about monsterkind's past and their wishes to be free. There's not many machines or man-made structures. The area's pretty abundant with nature. A lot of the puzzles are even made of flowers. I really like the fantasy plants, like the bells, bridge seeds, and echo flowers. Makes the world itself feel magical, even outside of the plot-important stuff. Waterfall has fairly few NPCs. It's not as sparse as the Ruins, but it's not a place many people seem to live in. There's only a couple scattered homes around, like those in Quiet Water or Temi Village. The isolation helps you feel more alone and vulnerable as you're stalked by Undine. Onion San talks about how a lot of monsters that used to live there moved to the city. This, again, furthers that theme of monsters struggling to live in such a small place. That theme also ties into the crystals seen on some of the walls. They're used by monsters to wish on, plus they make for pleasant visuals that contrast how dark Waterfall is. However, as nice looking as the gems are, they're not real stars. The younger monsters don't even know what stars are. It shows what the underground lacks and how people long for the surface. I like how Hotland doesn't seem to have many permanent inhabitants. It makes sense that the lava area wouldn't be where many want to settle down. Rather, many NPCs just commute through there, either for work or school. Also cool how that's built on by a minor detail in the alarm clock text. That there's an entire university in Hotland whereas Gore met Rudy at. The core is cooled down by ice cubes, which resolves what was going on with those giant ice cubes all the way back in Snowdin and Waterfall. It's a pretty cool way to connect areas that are so far apart, and it makes for a great moment of realization if you remember seeing those ice cubes before. The enemies found here are mercenaries Metaton hired to fight you. I love these three. Final Frogget, Whimsalot, and Astigmatism. Three beefed up versions of enemies from the ruins. Like the ice cubes, this makes you think back to the beginning of the game, and how far you've come. It adds to the fact that this is essentially the last area before the final bosses, and to keep pushing forward. No one lives in the core, which makes sense. It's just a geothermal generator that's a couple rooms big. But I do want to point out this one weird NPC that talks about this weird fire room. And how they just enjoyed sitting here, watching the flames as a kid. It's just a nice, cozy, oddly personal story. Gives a little bit of life to this giant power generator. Also obviously Gaster built the thing. It's an impressive, massive machine, so to credit its construction to this mysterious character shows how competent he was and how great an effect he had on the underground, even when there's only a handful of lines about him in the entire game. It's also just cool to have influential figures who are no longer around. Shows the underground has a history that goes beyond what we got to see. The design of New Home has pretty clear intents. The fact that it's mostly reused assets from the ruins and home connect this place tutorial. It being gray-scaled shows how sad and empty this place has felt since Asgore lost his family. The golden flowers peppered everywhere symbolize how, to Asgore, this house is a constant reminder of those he lost, and of the surface. Even more so when you get to the throne room, which has been turned into a field of golden flowers. Asgore hasn't been a father or a husband in a long time. He's more at home on the throne, being a king to his people. On the topic of reused assets, New Home is a pretty good example of less is more and work smarter not harder. We never get to explore very much of it. Just Asgore's house and a couple rooms of the castle. New Home has been established to be this very crowded place suffering from overpopulation. However, rather than make a billion new NPCs just to show this fact, the player's already been made aware of. Asgore's house just has random encounters from all over the game. This accomplishes a ton of things. It shows that many monsters live in New Home. How the inhabitants come from all across the underground. It shows how nice and down to earth of a king Asgore is to let random monsters go through his house. It allows you to learn about the history of the Dreamers, and the opinions of monster kind as a whole. The fact that this story is told by monsters using the random encounter mechanic shows that, these are your enemies. These are the monsters you've been fighting against, who you may have even killed. And yet despite that, they're not bad people who are just out for blood. Monster kind, for as weak and demonized as they've been, just want the right to live in this world. The ending of the sequence is a great encapsulation of this. It's told by a single Frogget. A weak, early game random encounter. One you likely just thought of as an animal at the start. Even something as lowly as it, just wants to be free. All done with mostly reused assets. I like how the entrance to the secret True Lab is disguised as a bathroom. Monsters don't need to use the bathroom, so no one will ever need to go in there. Plus Alfie's probably got the idea for a bathroom because she watches human anime. Well, that's all. Thanks for watching.